Hello, everyone. I'm Sherri, your host at healthfitnessbroadcast.com. Today, my guest is Steve Brown from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we are talking about his latest book, Relentless Mettle. So, welcome back to the show, Steve.
Thanks, Sherri. Always a pleasure. Great to see you.
Thanks. Steve is a triathlete and a cancer survivor, so he has a whole lot of inspiration to bring to everyone, whether you're suffering or struggling or not. So even healthy people, you are inspiration to them. So let's start, catch everybody up on in the beginning when we met, 2005 the first time? 2006.
You were one of the very first people I spoke to when I was first diagnosed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we did that radio interview, and then you wrote this book. I just want to talk about this briefly.
Yeah.
When was that? When was that written?
So that was in 2006, and
Okay.
that kind of chronicled a little bit about my background, the initial diagnosis, the treatment, and then a couple months post-treatment to when I got back to racing again. And then the story pretty much ended, but a whole lot has happened since then.
Right.
It's kind of the purpose to catch people up with the latest.
Right. And a couple years ago when we spoke, maybe a year ago, year and a half ago, we spoke because, well, first I just want to catch everyone up on how amazing that your mindset was when you were diagnosed and you went for treatments, and you would run a few miles to get your treatments, and what you said about visualizing when you sweat, the cancer cells just sweating off. You were sweating them out. So I love that mindset. If you can kind of recap on.
Yeah. It was, the mind can be a terrible or a wonderful thing. It can be one of your worst enemies, or it can really be one of your strongest allies. And that's really a choice we make. But through my treatment, I really used a lot of mental imagery, as I do with multi-sport training and racing, but particularly with treatment and kind of running home from treatment. I would just get done getting all these toxic chemicals coursed through my veins. And in my mind, I was just role-playing these little cancer cells just dying off, essentially, and falling off out of my body. And I was even having fun with it and just kind of pretending to kick them into the storm drains along the road as I was running home. And it just gave me a very empowering feeling, to think that, I was making a difference in that fight, but it put me in a good place mentally. And if you're in a good place mentally, physically, your body's going to follow.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And he also became a coach for team and training.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, one of the very first things I did when I was diagnosed, after we had all the necessary conversations with professionals and family members, I reached out to a guy I knew who was a coach with team and training, and he knew of my passion for the sport, and I let him know of my new diagnosis. So it was kind of a no-brainer to get involved with that organization, and it's been 10 years, both since my diagnosis and since my involvement with team and training, and it's been an incredibly wonderful relationship, because I get to, I embrace the sport so much, and I get to work with, eager, excited, nervous, some brand new people to the sport, and kind of bring them through the process and train them and help them and mentor them and coach them while they're raising funds and awareness for this blood cancer, my blood cancer, essentially, which is ultimately going to, not that I'm doing it for selfish reasons, but it's ultimately going to prolong and improve the quality of my life, but thousands of others, if not more than that. So it's just a great partnership.
So your love of running existed before then and still to this day. How many Ironman races have you done?
12 finishes. Couple more starts that didn't have favorable outcomes, but you learn just as much from those as if not more, from the ones that you aren't able to finish as the ones that you are able to finish. So, and I made the decision last year that I think that was enough Ironman racing for me. I'm perfectly content to do some of the shorter races and then still have a late season marathon, and maybe even a little bit longer than a marathon. I'm looking at some ultra marathons, but just the mentality and the emotional commitment required for Ironman, I declared myself officially graduated, and I'm going to close the
Good.
chapter on that
That's a good
and
place to be.
move on to something else.
And then the marathons. How many marathons have you done?
So the magic number this past fall at New York was 26. Kind of
Nice.
kind of prolific since it's
Yeah,
26
perfect.
mile race, right?
Perfect. Yeah, perfect
Yeah,
number. So, a few years later, the ugly word cancer came knocking at your door
yeah.
again. So, you were in remission, and tell us about that. What year was that? 2010?
I think
20?
it was 12. So
20?
I was in remission for a really long time. And to be honest with you, I kind of felt like from 2006, when I went through treatment and reached my initial remission, every appointment after that just seemed like a rubber stamp approval. And everything was fine. My blood work remained fine. No real signs, no real symptoms. It kind of was like, and my doctor, he told me from day one, look, this is a chronic thing. We're going to have to manage it indefinitely. Um, but in my mind, since I felt so good and since I responded so well to the initial treatment, I had kind of closed the door. You know what I mean? Like I felt this is I'm bigger than this, and this is so far behind me that I don't think I have to worry about it. I'm in remission, and I'm going to remain here for a really long time. Intellectually, I think I knew differently, but emotionally, that's how I was feeling. But then in 2012, the symptoms came back to a level that mandated some initial treatment. So, that was kind of declared a relapse of sorts. And we needed to go back into the chemo suite and have some of the same things, same treatment as what I was originally dealt from the back in 2006.
So then, what you wrote this book this year, so this past year,
Yeah.
um, and
See, you have some
this.
pages marked. I'm worried.
Oh yeah, no. I have to confess, this is a magnifier.
Okay.
So when I don't have my glasses, I got this lucky thing. So um, yeah, so I love it because I want to tell everyone this is if whether you're going through treatment or you know someone, this is the best book to read because it's very comforting. You're like a cheerleader all the way through for everyone. I love that each, because we spoke before about how you told your family. You have two daughters, your wife, how they took it and responded. And we talked about that before. But in here is really great because there is a separate small chapter, and each of your daughters and your wife explained how,
They told it.
yeah, and
They're,
they told it in their words, how it affected them. And it's very touching, very moving. Um, what I really like is at the end, the chapter, Don't Forget Your Chocolate.
mm-hmm.
And, I talked about how all the way through you were everybody's cheerleader. And if you're feeling like you need a chocolate, little comfort, read this book. And what you put is everybody needs some, but don't, you said, do something you love and keep your head and your heart in a happy place. And that's what you've done all along. Um,
I've tried. It's been my goal. So yeah.
yeah, so I like that. Yeah, I wrote that down because I want to steal that quote from you. And I wrote it down and
Oh, yours.
I'm going to print it out and frame it, and so I can look at that every day. Keep your head in your heart in your happy place. So, do you have some tips from the book that you can give to those people that are, feeling like, oh, this is feeling hopeless? There you go.
Yeah, usually what happens, both family members and patients alike, it's not like a doctor comes to you with, hey, here's your diagnosis, here's the full spectrum of treatment options, here's the right plan for you, here's how it's all going to go, here's the roadmap, here's the protocol. Everything's going to line up perfectly, and all the stars are going to come together, and everything's going to be good. That's not what happens. Usually, it's met with more questions than answers. You're being given a could be this, but it might be that, but we're trying to rule out that kind of a situation. And it just creates angst and anxiety for the patient, especially the family members, you know. Um, I guess the most important thing to take away from all this is, you know, to make sure you've aligned yourself with a good medical team. And if that needs to be multiple medical teams with second and third opinions, to do that, you know, to ask the right questions, but to be patient and to trust and respect the work that they're doing. A lot of times it's hard during those periods of uncertainty, but um, you know, I hate to oversimplify it, but if you have a major repair needed in your home, you're not going to hover over the guy's back trying to figure out exactly what he's doing, how he's doing it, when he's going to get done. And you know, if you've done your homework and you trust the doctor, you need to let him do what he needs to do. Um, you know, ask smart questions and ask questions often, but at the same time, just try to exercise a little bit of patience through the process.
And then what you mentioned, of course, the family communication, which is so important. But I'm sure, and I think we talked about this before, there are people out there that are going through this. And like you said, you had a positive mindset, and your family rallied around you. But there are people out there who think initially, oh, well, okay, I'm gonna fight this, I'm gonna beat this, and then the family wants to be there, but they fall apart all around the person, like, oh goodness, so you're gonna die, and they can't get past
Yeah.
um, that fear
Yeah.
to support, and then that person has to be even stronger to pull everybody else up, and it's like, no, we're gonna fight this, we're gonna beat this. So do you have any tips for those situations, those people who start out initially like, I'm a warrior, I'm gonna beat this, and then they have to go around picking up all the family members, especially if their parents are older, and then they just
Right.
worry and are full of fear.
It's so difficult to align all the pieces, right? Like the patient has his or her own mental process that he needs to go through. The family members have their own mental process that they need to go through. And a lot of times they're spinning off in different circles, and they're kind of driving themselves crazy, and they don't know how to align with their cancer partner or their cancer family member. And it's just a really difficult space because both types of people, both the patients and the supporters are going to go through periods of ups and downs. And if those periods aren't in sync, you're going to be colliding into one another. And it's just so hard to, the family members are constantly walking on eggshells because they're not 100% sure what the right thing is to say at the right moment. And there's going to be some days that the patient just says, you know what, I'm having a cruddy day, so let me have it, and I'll be back to normal tomorrow. So 2 points, long-winded answer to your question is, I think it's really important for the supporters to just have all senses open and aware, and to just kind of read the patient and what their needs might be, and just try to tread lightly, not try to offer too much, or either in support or in too much space. You have to find that right balance. Right. But I think it's really important for the supporters to have their own support groups. So there's so many support groups out there for family members, so that the family members in similar situations can talk through this as a unit with other people who are going through the same thing, and get some ideas and understand what some of the resources are, and how do you talk to the patient, how do you talk to other family members, what do you share, when do you share it, and things like that. So I mean, everybody needs support in that situation. It's not just the patients, it's the family members as well.
Good tip. Now I want to ask you, the book Relentless Mettle, My Cancer, My Rules. I understand My Cancer, My Rules. What inspired you to title it Relentless Mettle?
So, in my mind, mettle has always been associated with, mental toughness in terms of endurance sports and endurance racing. And relentless is kind of a very active key buzzword in the blood cancer community as well. So it's a tagline for both the headstrong organization and leukemia and lymphoma organization. So the combining of the two it just made perfect sense. Relentless Mettle, because it can be taken both ways. It's the relentless mettle, or the relentless pursuit of something endurance sports related, or of just conquering cancer and staying on the right path.
Okay, I want to ask you for a running tip, being the coach that you are,
Okay.
running tip for anyone, anyhow, whether you're struggling, suffering, fighting, or you're just wanting to feel better.
Yeah.
Running tip.
The number one thing that I hear all the time is, I would love to run, but I run 100 yards and I'm out of breath, or I just can't stick with it, or I can't. Um, I use the analogy of somebody saying, "Hey, I'd really like to learn how to play a musical instrument," and they sit down for the first time, and if they're not proficient at it after one lesson, they get disgusted, and they don't want to pursue it. It's no different,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Running is a process, and if you're not coming to it with a running background, you're going to have to be comfortable evolving through that process. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days, and most importantly, you're going to need to start at ground zero, and it's going to be a very gradual build up. And I would encourage people, if they are starting truly at square one, to incorporate a walk run method of beginning training, where you're walking for several minutes, and then you actually take a running break, right? And you run for a little bit, and then you're taking a walking break, and then so you build from there over time, and then over time, the running breaks become much longer, the walking breaks become much shorter, and the key message there is, walking is not failing to run. Walking is a very viable, you know, opportunity and alternative method of run training.
Those are good tips. I like that. Walking is not failure to run. I like
No,
that. And
yeah,
lessons. Yeah,
you
just
can write that down too.
yeah, I'm gonna write that down too. I'm stealing that quote from you too.
Mhm.
Yeah, because that's it so simplifies it. Just each time you run, you're giving yourself another lesson at the instrument. Your instrument
Right,
is
that's right.
is your
And
body.
you really do, you know, you take that walking break and you start running again, right? And you run for a little bit, and then you take the walking break. You are still building endurance over time. And even if you do nothing but the same walk run interval, you're getting stronger, you're building endurance, you're getting healthier. And that's the most important thing. And that's why we should all be doing all of this activity anyway.
Yeah, great. So I forgot to remind you that at the end of the show before, I've asked you to show Sherri your shoes. So I'm hoping you have some sneakers on and you can tell me about your latest favorite shoe and why you like
Newtons,
it.
Newtons.
Oh, nice.
I am a huge fan of Newton Running. In fact, I'm a philanthropic ambassador for that organization. Um, very, very lightweight.
Love
Um,
it. I love the colors.
and the key, you should see my closet. I have just about every
Every
color on
color.
the. Yeah, yeah.
You'll have
Um,
to take a picture and send me a picture of
I
all
will.
your shoes laid out.
And the key benefit to Newton's is it actually employs or emphasizes a 4-foot running method, where you're not striking on your heel, but you're not on your toes either, but you're landing on the ball or the 4-foot. It's a more efficient. It mimics the barefoot running style, which is the way man was meant to run. And before man was wearing expensive running shoes, that's how he was running. So Newton kind of tailors the shoe around that style of running, and that's, for many years, that's been my style. So finding a shoe company that fit my style was great. And
Awesome.
it's a very philanthropically minded organization, and they're involved in a lot of nonprofit projects and ventures. So
Nice. I need to try this. Well, my shoe for today is Asics running shoe.
nice.
And
Love
yeah,
purple.
I'm like
Team Extending Purple.
hooked on Asics, both running shoes and cross trainers. So love it. So yeah, I'll have to try out those shoes again. What's the name of that one?
Newton, like the fig.
Okay. Newton like I would have said Newton like the cookie. All right. Thank you so much for sending this book. It was a joy to read that, and it was a joy to talk with you again. Thanks for inspiring so many people, and I look forward to your next book, because these weren't your only 2 books. Now these were talking about your own experience with cancer and running, but you have several other books. What are the name of your other ones?
Yeah, so I have 50 Fit Tips, which is just a fun little pocket-sized book with little tips like I shared with you a couple minutes ago. I think some of those were in that book. Um, and they're really just quick, short reads of little inspirational things that just to help keep you motivated and keep you, you know, keep you on the right path. Um, the other one's called In Search of Center. And that came to me. I was inspired by, I was talking to a guy named Scott Tinley, who is a legend in the Ironman community and is a former world champion. But more importantly than that, he's gone on to become a PhD English professor. And he's always been a better writer in my mind than an athlete. And he's always been kind of my mentor in terms of just trying to get my thoughts out, right? And we were having a conversation back and forth, and we were talking about Ironman racing and pushing the limits and so on and so forth. And he said to me, if you think about it, how are you ever going to find your center if you don't push the outer limits? And that just really stuck with me. And so finding In Search of One's Center, or Finding One's Center. And that really is just a series of kind of inspirational and motivational short stories and little pieces related to that kind of thing.
So if I want to steal some more of your tips, I'll just go to those books.
Sure. Yeah.
Another quote from Steve I'm stealing. Thanks again.
Very
And
well.
as always, I appreciate your time, your energy, and your inspiration to
Thanks, Sherri.
help
Great to see you.
others. Okay, great talking with you. If you like this video, please share this and help inspire others. Appreciate everything and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching.